welcome to the D3D4 Football Podcast with me, your host, James Richards. Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to 2020. It's our first podcast of this new decade. Quite excited to say that, actually, though it does make me feel slightly older than I'd like. But, yeah, we're back, joined again by Ed and Chris, looking at all the football that's happened over the festive period in League 1 and 2. I'm happy to say our friends at Man v Fat are sponsoring this episode. If you don't know about them, then I highly recommend you check them out. Basically, Man v Fat is a football league where men looking to lose weight can go and take part. Really good idea, actually, because I did a jog this morning and I can't think of any worse way of trying to keep fit than just running for the sake of it. So playing football is a really good, engaging, sociable way of losing weight, and Man v Fat have certainly got that down to a T. 90% of their participants do lose considerable amount of weight, so it's a really successful campaign. And if even if you're not big, if you just want to keep fit and have fun playing football, it's a great place to go. So go check them out. Their website is manvfatfootball.org, so definitely worth a look. We are going to be going, as I said, looking at every single team in League 1 and 2 and how they've done over the festive period. So there's a lot to get through, and we're going to jump straight in to League 1. League 1. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to be starting at the bottom. And so there hasn't been any change at the bottom of the table. And we're going to start with you, Ed, looking at Bolton Wanderers. Their form, 3 games over the Christmas period. A 0-0 draw with Sunderland, a 1-1 draw with Shrewsbury, and a 4-3 defeat to your boys Burton.
Yeah. That 4-3 was, from a Burton perspective, an incredibly stressful game. 2-0 down within, I think, about 11 minutes. Just about managed to hang on to that. But I think what that shows from my perspective, is that there is fight in this Bolton team. And there certainly is a very slim possibility that we could see the miracle happen, but still there. You look at their overall form, they've taken 15 points from the last 10 games, 18 points from the last 15. It's not top. It still needs to be improved a lot, but if we are expecting players to come in this January window, I would not rule them out of potentially getting out of that bottom 3.
You'd argue, though, over the festive period, they probably needed a few more points, took 2 points from a possible 9. When you're in the position they are, I expect they need almost better than playoff form to get out of the trouble they're in.
Yeah, I would say so, definitely. They did get that win against Southend on the 21st, just before the Boxing Day fixtures began. That draw with Sunderland is not a bad one. I think the draw with Shrewsbury could have improved, and obviously if they'd managed to take the 3 points from Burton, you'd really be looking at this and saying it's been a strong festive period. But you look at their next games as well. They've got away trips to Rochdale and Lincoln, a home game against Shrewsbury, and then an away trip home game against Portsmouth, and then an away trip to Shrewsbury. They need to be probably getting at least 9 points from that, if not all 12 points, to realistically be pushing all the way.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. Southend, the next team. Chris, again, 2 draws and a defeat over the festive period for Southend, but again in their position, I mean, they are 14 points or so adrift of Tranmere, of MK Dons, who sit just outside the playoff, the relegation places. It's not going to be enough, and in that fixture list, of course, they lost on the 21st to Bolton. They then drew 2-2 at home with MK Dons, a game which you argue they should have won, and a 1-1 draw rescued right at the end against AFC Wimbledon.
It's not good enough. As you say, I think it's 15 points they are. They're only 2 points up of Bolton beneath them, with Bolton having 3 games in hand on them. It really is a seriously dire situation for them, and they're not showing any signs of getting out of it. I'm not one to write off teams this early, but it's going to have to take a very, very impressive January transfer window for them to really pick up form, I think.
Yeah, we don't write off teams early, but we are writing Southend off. I think it'd be I think their survival would be a bigger miracle than Bolton's, in the respect that I just haven't seen anything in their squad at all this season to suggest that they've got enough to stay.
There's nothing.
Yeah, it's been very poor defensively, abysmal. How many goals they conceded now? 65?
65 times, 38 goal difference. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a team like this that hasn't, had points deducted.
Yeah. Well, Oxford did their best in 2000, 2001, actually.
I was only 3 then.
Oh, bloody hell, shut up, you.
And it's worth mentioning. I think it's worth mentioning as well that Bolton have still got 3 games in hand on them, so you're pretty much looking assured that at least going to overtake them, and we're going to have Southend probably ending up rock bottom of the league, which is just awful.
Yeah, terrible, especially when the team, like you say, with points
People
deduction.
of them had 10 points deducted, was it, or 12?
12, yeah.
Tranmere's festive period, not much better for them. A 4-2 defeat at Burton, a 1-1 draw at home to Blackpool, and then a 4-1 crushing defeat against Coventry. I really do expect to see some recruits. Obviously, Alex Woodyard coming in on loan from Peterborough. Peter Clark joining from Fleetwood. There is talk of Manny Month leaving for pastures new, mainly linked to a South Coast move to Portsmouth. Obviously, he's contracted until 2020, so keeping hold of him will be far easier than if his contract was running at the end of this season. I think it's 2021 his contract runs out. But 750,000 was the muted price tag. Now, obviously, I think they're pushing their luck a little bit to get that, but you never know. Money does talk, and Tranmere may not want to refuse that sort of money for one of their star players. But they do need to improve, though. I still have enough faith in this team that they might be able to stay up this season, because there are several sides struggling, but it wasn't a good festive period. I'm not convinced that that form going into this is enough. But a big shout out to their effort yesterday in the FA Cup. 3-0 down to come back and draw 3-3 against Premier League Watford. I mean, the money they'll get from that tie, the replay, that's great stuff. So I'm really pleased for them in that respect. But their next fixtures are, the next one is, you'd say, a vital game, playing away at Southend. And then they've got tricky games against Ipswich, Blackpool and Sunderland before an away trip to Bolton. So, yeah, not an easy run, but some pretty important fixtures within that list that they must be looking to get maximum points from. Ed, MK Dons, that's a little bit more like it.
Yeah, I think this is the first team we're looking at that's had quite a good festive period. Since that win over Oxford, which obviously you're not a particularly big fan of, I suppose, they've taken 7 points from a possible 12, and that has helped them climb out of the bottom 3. Yeah, they've had a real good upturn in results. You look at their next coming games as well. They have got a couple of tough trips: Coventry, Burton, home game against Sunderland, and away game against Portsmouth. That's a pretty difficult run-in. But if they can get something from those and carry on the momentum they're building, they could pull even further clear, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the win against Portsmouth, extremely impressive. 3-1. And obviously, Rhys Healey coming back is massive. And a 3-0 win over Bristol Rovers, who haven't got off to the best start under Ben Gardner, their new manager. It's fair to say that is a massively impressive result. In fact, 3 wins on the spin at home as well. Maybe that home form is starting to turn. Very good. Then Chris, AFC Wimbledon.
I don't think they've had a bad festive period at all. They've got that win over Bristol Rovers, which I think is a really impressive win on Boxing Day. Lost to Oxford, but the form Oxford are in, I don't think there's any disgrace in that.
They played quite well actually in that game as well.
Yeah, and then they've got a draw against Southend. They maybe would have hoped to have won that one. I think the biggest disappointment for them will have been the loss on the 21st against Tranmere. But all in all, I think that's a reasonable sort of festive period for them. I don't think they'll be too disheartened by it.
No, especially when other teams below them are not pulling up any. Is it trees or plants? I forget.
I think the actual phrase is trees, but Barry Owen's phrase is plants.
Yeah, indeed it is. Right, Rochdale, Ed. What do you think of Rochdale?
Rochdale, not particularly brilliant. 3 straight defeats before that very helpful win against Accrington on New Year's Day, which helped them, I think, put a bit of breathing space between themselves and the bottom 3, certainly. Their next games, they've got a home one with Bolton, got to go to Wickham, home game against Gillingham, and away trip to MK Dons. It's quite a mix, I'd say, between the 4 of those. But if they can take a couple of wins out of that,
they've got to try and beat Bolton at home, haven't they? And
yeah,
you'd argue, don't lose to Gillingham at home, and don't try not to lose to MK Dons, who are on a great home run of form either.
Absolutely.
Yeah, difficult to see. Well, I mean, this kind of form, it's quite a hard league to get relegated out of this season due to the situation that we find ourselves in, with only 3 going down and certainly some teams tanking. So, yeah, Rochdale could do do well out of that. I mean, the big thing as well for them yesterday, great result in the FA Cup. Not too dissimilar to how they did against Tottenham a few years ago, but a 1-1 draw with Newcastle, a very useful financial replay there. Accrington Stanley, I've been enjoying the way they've been playing. I think their data has always suggested that they would find their form, and they certainly have. Festive period in particular, 2 wins and a defeat, but actually going back a bit further, I think it's only 1 defeat in 7, 4 wins in that run. Been playing superbly well. They've got a nice mix of young players, their experienced campaigners, people like Jordan Clark coming to the fore as he always does. I've been really impressed. And obviously they've got people like Colby Bishop scoring goals. Very useful player to have signed out of non-league, a typical Accrington diamond in the rough signing. And they will be absolutely buoyed by the results they've had. Obviously beating Burton 2-0 was after that wonderful Boxing Day result at Blackpool, where we went to Blackpool, who have not had a good Christmas period, as you'll shortly find out. Beat them 1-0. Rochdale have this habit of beating the teams around them, so I wasn't too shocked by that result. But Accrington can take a lot of heart from their recent form, and it just shows that if you can go on a decent run, how far you can push yourself up the table. I mean, they've got 29 points now. It doesn't sound a lot, but Peterborough, who are in the last playoff spot, only have 36. I mean, that is unbelievably tight. Ridiculous. Chris, Lincoln, obviously still finding their feet under Michael Appleton, but not a bad Christmas period at all.
No, a little bit up and down. I still think that they should be higher up in the league than they are. I think they'll have been disappointed to lose to Oxford, but as I said before, there's no disgrace in losing to Oxford at the moment.
Yeah, it's great to hear that. Someone said
fantastic win against Ipswich and Peterborough. 2 really, really strong wins. And then yesterday, really the makers of their own downfall, especially with some disgraceful goalkeeping, really, for, I think it was their Sunderland's second goal.
Playing out from the back, eh?
Well, you know my thoughts on that, James.
Your tactical analysis of it was superbly put, yes. I think I won't paraphrase it too much, but it's a load of bollocks is what it is. Was your response to my...
I think word for word, yeah.
Yeah, playing out from the back. It's in vogue, though. It's fashionable. I don't think it necessarily works. I think Oxford tried it, and then Carl Robinson was pragmatic enough to make some adjustments, and that has really helped Oxford's form. But Lincoln, I don't disagree with you that they perhaps could be a bit higher up, but given the tightness of the table, it may not be that long before they are. And also, losing the Cowleys has really, after such a successful period running the club, it was always going to be very difficult. Ed, Doncaster?
Yeah, I think it's a similar situation to Lincoln, really. You look at them being a lot higher. The problem you've got, you can't really read their position in the table and see it as what they should be, because there's so many games behind still. They've only played 21. Some teams around them have played 23, 24, so we've still got a lot to see, really, from what they can do. They did have a good period, I think. That win over Peterborough at London Road was a very good result. Narrow defeat to Sunderland, and then that home win over Oxford as well. So they've had a decent few games. And you look at what's coming up next to them. They've got Shrewsbury at home, away to Bristol Rovers, home game with Coventry, and then a trip to Stadium of Light. If they can get 4 positive results out of that and start winning those games in hand that they've got as well, they'll be right up there.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at 6 points targeted from the next 12 available, that would not be bad when you consider that's quite a tricky fixture run that they've got to take on. And also, I would say they played very well against Oxford. Anderson at the back was superb, and Reece James took his goal superbly well. Shrewsbury, it is Shrewsbury, BBC Radio Oxford, infuriatingly still calling them Shrewsbury from back in the day, but no, it is Shrewsbury. 3 games, and as sort of mixed as you can get, really. A win, a loss, and a draw. Great result in the FA Cup at Bristol City. They probably feel they should have won that as well. But they're keeping themselves in touch with those playoff places. I think looking at the results, the win at Blackpool was superb. I mean, they had to defend at times and dig in. Poor performance really against Rotherham to lose that one. It was a late goal that they conceded in their home match to on Boxing Day as well. So a bit of a disappointing end to the sort of Christmas period for them, and a 1-1 draw, frustrating a lot of the fans. That 1-1 draw at Bolton. But, as you say, they've got some interesting fixtures against teams in and around them coming up, with Doncaster, Lincoln and Fleetwood next to come, and obviously then Bolton visit the new Meadow on the 25th of January. Ed, at Burton, how's it been?
It's been alright since that defeat to Wycombe, where there was a lot of difficulties and people weren't very happy with that. It's been 9 points from a possible 12 over the next 4 games. The only real blip was that defeat to Accrington, but you've seen some of the results Accrington have already picked up this season, so it's not too much of a surprise to me. What's really impressed me, though, is that we've kind of sorted out the areas that have been criticised a bit. There was a real lack of home goals that Burton had scored. It had been 4 before the start of the Christmas period, and Boyce had only scored 3 in the league. Burton scored 7 in their 2 home games, and Boyce got 4 goals over the 4 matches. So that silenced some of the areas around that, and it's starting to look a lot better than it was a couple of weeks ago, let's put it that way. I'm looking at this league game against Fleetwood next weekend. If we really are this team that has ambitions at the top 6, we've got to be winning that. But Fleetwood have been something of a bogey team in recent years to Burton, so could be a fun
I think
one.
Fleetwood are like everyone's bogey team, especially at
True.
Fleetwood. Horrible place to go and try and get a result. You've got 3 home games in a row though coming up as well. That'll be interesting based on your last 2 matches at. Is the Pirelli? Is it still the Pirelli?
It is the Pirelli, yep.
Yeah, so there you go. So interesting stuff from Burton there again, like 3 points from Peterborough. So it could be, with those 9 points in the last 12 available, they've really pulled them up by the bootstraps. Gillingham, I'll take this one because I've been really impressed with how Gillingham have done. We weren't very positive about Steve Evans, not necessarily because of his managerial ability, but more because of the way he presents himself. But fair play to him. 6 undefeated in the league, 3 wins and 3 draws. They've been criticised for not being able to match the big teams. Well, they went to Ipswich and got a point. They got a late equaliser against Portsmouth at the Priestfield to take a point from that, which, given Portsmouth's stature, is very impressive. Beat Rochdale, beat MK Dons, and the big one that came earlier in the month, of course, was beating Sunderland. So they've had a really good run of form. I would say as well that if they can just get this may be a tired old expression, but if they can find a focal point up front, maybe a better goal scorer than Mikael Mandron, they could really have a good run at the playoffs. I'm not sure. Obviously 12th position makes it sound like they're very much mid-table, but again, because it's so tight, just 3 points outside the playoffs, and the form they're in, they are arguably the informed team at the moment, and their data is suggesting that they're doing everything right. So massive game next weekend against Peterborough coming up. Then the biggest game of the season for them, of course, against Oxford United. We are everyone's biggest game of the season, of course. Yeah, of course we are. But that's going to be an interesting one. And obviously then games against Rochdale and Shrewsbury to see out the month. But an excellent run of form from the Gills. Ed, Blackpool, not so much good.
No, their last win was that home victory against Fleetwood on the 7th of December. Since then, they've taken 2 points. So it's not been very pretty from a Blackpool perspective. They've had back-to-back home defeats against Accrington and Shrewsbury, beating at Rotherham, which is not too bad, I don't think. I think Rotherham are the very top side in this league, but those draws with Sunderland and Tranmere are the only real positives they've had to take from the whole of December, really.
Yeah, not scoring either, like they were before.
No, they've been lacking the goals as well. I think it's 3 goals over the last 5 games, if I'm right.
Yeah, they didn't, and 2 home blanks, like you say, in those defeats to Shrewsbury and Accrington. Yeah, difficult times. Simon Grayson obviously is a good coach, keeping his side close, but there's a lot of reports about maybe Nangele would leave in the January window. He's a sort of, I don't know, he's a bit of an enigma as a striker, because he's the kind of player that you don't always expect to do well consistently. Doing well at Blackpool doesn't necessarily mean he'll do well elsewhere, given his previous record. But, if you're scoring goals at the moment, you tend to attract a lot of attention, and he is certainly doing that. Jordan Thompson as well, being linked with a move to the Championship. So they could have a bit of a shake-up during this window, but they will not be happy at all with their results over the festive period. Only 1 point from a possible 9, and that has seen them slip down to 10th in the table. Chris, Portsmouth.
They continue to confuse me.
Yeah, I think they confuse everyone, but no denying that it's been a mixed bag over the Christmas games with a win, a loss, and a draw, but they're edging ever closer to those playoff places.
Absolutely. They got 2 fantastic wins, against Ipswich and Wycombe. Then they go to MK Dons and lose 3-1. Where did that come from? Solid draw against Gillingham. and then a win in the FA Cup yesterday against Fleetwood, which I think will do them some good, definitely financially, as they go into this transfer window.
Yeah, definitely will. Still, some fans not particularly happy with Kenny Jackett. Portsmouth are kind of like the inverse Sunderland, aren't they? In that they're being linked with every centre-back going, whereas Sunderland were linked with every striker going last.
And apparently Seddon had a really good game yesterday. So
what a good player he is, though. I mean,
yeah.
If you remember his performances for Stevenage and then for Wimbledon, he's certainly got a bright future. Bit surprised Birmingham don't give him a bit more of a chance, perhaps competition at that level. Still a bit early for him, but
I think Portsmouth is a good level, though. I mean, that's not far below the sort of facilities of a Championship club, and playing in the top end of League One.
Well, he's stepping up, isn't he? I mean, each move you look at where he's gone. Stevenage to Wimbledon to Portsmouth. Each time he's improving. Ed, take us through Sunderland, because yesterday's result was pretty good. In fact, they are in the league now, unbeaten in 5, and over Christmas they've taken 7 points.
Yeah, they're starting. Are we finally starting to see that upturn? You'd hope, really. It has been 5 unbeaten. I think those 3 draws. That Fleetwood one, obviously, we've spoken about how Fleetwood are quite a difficult team for everyone to play. But that home draw with Bolton, I look at that 0-0 draw is a disappointing result out of all those to me. And you look at what they've got coming up next, where they've got to play Wickham, MK Dons, Doncaster and Tranmere. And that's a run where you'd expect a club like that to be taking near enough maximum points. But that Wickham home game could really be the indication of whether they are going to push into that top 6 or not, I think.
Yeah, it's been you can't deny, though, the festive period has been, in terms of results, better for them. And it was good to see them grab 3 quick goals at home. The Stadium of Light has been bereft of sort of performances like that recently, obviously helped by Lincoln's very generous defending. But we'll see. They're linked again with Sam Winnell, Sheffield Wednesday striker. They'll definitely be upgrading a few players. Obviously put up for sale by Stuart Donald, who's been getting a lot of stick. It's funny how he's gone from being this sort of new age chairman who everyone loves for being honest and open and communicative, and then suddenly he's villain number 1. It's just so strange how things like that.
On himself, though, hasn't he? It certainly seems that he's brought it upon himself. He's made some really poor or strange decisions in the back room. You've had directors leaving left, right, and centre, and the finances don't seem to be there anymore. It's all gone very, very strange, very, very quickly.
Very quiet as well, isn't it? I mean,
quiet. I mean, he was at Hartlepool yesterday, I think.
Well, according to his son on Twitter, he wasn't, but
right.
I don't know. It's a lot of angst going on. Bristol Rovers, Ed, take us through them, because Ben Gardner's coming as new manager, but they have slipped down the table.
Yeah, before that Wimbledon defeat on Boxing Day, they'd gone 6 unbeaten, I believe, and then obviously that was a disappointing defeat at the Memorial Stadium as well. Followed that up with a half decent draw at Fleetwood, and then that heavy defeat 3-0 at home away to MK Dons, and they've really started to kind of slip down that table, certainly.
Yeah, still obviously points, like we say, so close, because they are still, I think, within 5 points of the automatic promotion places, but not been an easy transition from Graham Coughlin to Ben Gardner by the looks of things as it stands. Obviously, he didn't take them for the Peterborough game. I think was his first game in Wimbledon, or was it Fleetwood? I can't remember.
I think it was a Wimbledon one. I think.
Not sure. We'll have to get a Bristol Rovers fan opinion on that one. But again, the defeat at MK Dons, they've improved, but that's a disappointing one and not been particularly good festive period. Chris, Fleetwood?
Not the best, I don't think. They've got a win against Rochdale, but you'd expect them to beat Rochdale with where they are in the table and how they're playing. I mean, they've had a more difficult run of games. They've got a draw against Bristol Rovers and a draw against Sunderland. Neither of those particularly disgraceful, but I'd have liked to see them get a few more points, I think.
I think they probably would have, because they've had 2 home games. They would have probably
exactly.
been targeting at least 1 win out of those. But it's not bad, because they haven't lost in the last 5, only 1 defeat in the last 7, I think. So not bad form, but perhaps not the number of points. But it does keep them in contention. If you keep doing that, which was the game that Joey Barton kind of lost his rag in.
Every game.
I think it was the Sunderland one.
Every game, yeah. It probably was, yeah. It was where they had a goal where, I mean, you look at it, he didn't touch the ball, but I looked at it and I go, yeah, but he's interfering in play. I don't know why there was such a big stink about it. If you're running towards the ball and it distracts the keeper and you're in an offside position, you can argue, I think, legitimately that you're interfering in play. But such a big deal was made about it. I thought, come on, it's one of those ones that's 50-50, and I didn't think you could fault the linesman for calling that. So save your mirth for when it does need to be given, and don't get the silly red card for that. 'Cause that's a touchline ban for him, probably a fine. So. Ed, Peterborough. Well. This is this the start of the bottle job, the perennial bottle job that we see year on year?
You hope not, don't you? But it is 3 defeats on the bounce, and 4 if you include that one to Burnley in the FA Cup, obviously, yesterday. It's been 5 points from a possible 18 over December and the New Year, and their only win in that time was that 1-0 victory over Bolton, so it has not been a very good festive period to Peterborough at all, I'd have to say.
Not at all. And Chris, worryingly, they haven't scored in 2 of those games. The Boxing Day defeat 3-0 to Doncaster, 3 goals conceded. 4-0 defeat at Rotherham, 4 goals conceded. And obviously 2 goals in a tight game, to be fair, against Lincoln. But, defensively, the last few games have been a little bit out of character.
Yeah, I mean, I think we sort of pointed out that maybe they had a couple of weaknesses in defence, but I think it's the lack of goals that really concerns me. You look at the attacking players that they've got in that team. They've got take out the FA Cup. They've got 1 goal in about 4 games. Is that?
Yeah.
That really concerns me.
Yeah, it's not been great. They've got a difficult game against informed Gillingham next before going to Wimbledon. And it's quite a tricky place to go, Wimbledon, and then obviously the big one, Rotherham, coming to London Road on the 25th of January. It's not an easy, you look at the next 6 games or so, it's not an easy run for Peterborough. And it's possible, if you believe the transfer rumours, that they could be losing Marcus Maddison and maybe even Ivan Toney, though 13 million, guys, is that a little bit unrealistic for Ivan Toney? That's the quoted price I've seen on several sources.
I don't know, when you look at the price of players, this all comes down to how much you're paid to get into the Premier League, ultimately. He's a very, very good striker. Peterborough see him as the best striker outside the Premier League. In the current market, it's high, but I don't think it's outrageous.
I think it might end up being somewhere in between with some add-ons if he does go.
Yeah.
But it's hard to see any Championship side probably going that high for a League One striker. We'll see what happens. But yeah, so Ed, moving on to Ipswich. This is the first time that I have seen real serious rumblings about Paul Lambert's future, and it has not been a good run. I think they are now, is it 8 games in the league without a win?
Yeah, that last win was the 5th of November when they beat Rochdale away 1-0. So, not been pretty at all.
No, they've lost 3 times in that 8 games, and pretty tricky. They've had to go to Wickham, they've had to go to Portsmouth. They've played Bristol Rovers, who are obviously in form, Coventry right up there, another game obviously at home to Wickham, and Blackpool. So, yes, it's not been a great run of results, but they haven't played any easy teams. I mean, you could argue the last team that you played with, in the lower half of the table, I suppose Lincoln, but Lincoln, again, they're not. You look at their squad and you think, this is a good team. So, yeah, it's not been, it certainly hasn't been a run where they've played any of the easier sides in the division. So I would say, yes, it's not been a great period of football for them. There's always going to be a blip like this. Chris, Paul Lambert, I mean, would you stick with him? I mean, Ipswich fans ultimately watch this week in, week out, and will have the ultimate opinion on it. But what's your take on Lambert?
You've allowed him to get to January now, and I think you give him that transfer window. If it had been a few weeks ago, maybe consider it. But once you get into the transfer window, you've set a budget for him, presumably. You stick with him. Otherwise, you're risking getting rid of a manager, waiting 2 or 3 weeks to bring someone else in, and by that time you've got no new players, which they could probably do with rejuvenating a bit at the moment.
Yeah, they've had some niggling injuries, which I do think has impacted them as well, which doesn't really get talked about. But, Kane Vincent-Young, who was doing so well for them after arriving from Colchester, he's been injured. Norwood's missed a few games. So, yeah,
there were a couple of wins off getting back into those top 2 places. I mean, they're on 38 points now. That's 3 points behind Rotherham with a game in hand.
Yeah, and you'd think that Ipswich going into January would have a better pulling power than some of their rivals as well.
You think so, yeah. And I don't know what their finances are like, but I'd imagine that they get good crowds. They've recently been in the Championship. You'd think they'll have a little bit of money to spend, especially with the aspirations of getting to the Championship.
We'll have to wait and see. But not a great festive period for them. Oxford United, I'll take that. 6 points.
Sure you will.
Yeah, it's been really good. I mean, frustrating performance against MK Dons to lose our good run of form, but you can't complain about the result at all. Doncaster was a very even game and we probably deserved a point, but no more than that. But yeah, beating Wycombe and Lincoln at home, can't argue with those games, and getting a result against AFC Wimbledon in what was a very tough match. Very happy. Really good for Oxford. Staying up and around the playoff places is the ambition. Through to the next round up for the FA Cup as well. Shandon Baptiste is a baller. The bloke is from another planet. He's such a good player. He scored a wonderful winner against Lincoln, and Ed, you even enjoyed the goal that he scored against Hartlepool yesterday.
Oh, brilliant.
Great goal.
Could watch that over and over again.
Yeah, he's tremendous. And, the thing for Oxford will be, obviously, Chris Cannon's already left the club, gone back to MLS with Columbus. So what we do in general will be important. It's more about trying not to lose any more players, because, I'm sure there'll be some of our squad that are attracting interest from the division above, so we just got to make sure that if we do sell, and we are a selling club, we get top dollar for them, and then and reinvest it wisely, and we've been quite good at doing that over the last few seasons. So yeah, I'll take that. I'm very happy with our festive form. Chris, Coventry, Mark Robbins has suggested there is no money, but looking at their results, who cares? They're doing really well.
Yeah, up to third in the league, which when you listen to what I said pre-season is amazing, although I don't know why you would listen to what I say. But, that's a fabulous win against Lincoln, and then 2 really strong wins, especially that one against Wycombe, 4-1. Really.
And that last goal, I have to say, the best assist I have seen this season, Jordan Shipley in the air, back heel, and a fantastic first-time finish from Matt Godden. That is, for me, you see all these Stormers of goal of the season. I'm not sure I've seen a better one than that, technically.
It's easy, that sort of technique.
Oh yeah, it's what you do all the time in your geology football team.
All the time, yeah. And then another good win on New Year's Day against Tranmere, and then in the FA Cup today against Bristol Rovers. We'll see if they can continue their good form.
Yeah, and obviously Tranmere's pitch, not good at all. There's quite a few of them actually cutting up really badly, but Tranmere's, Bradford's, people like that, they are looking horrendous at the moment. Macclesfield's is barely league.
They have a pitch.
Yeah, well, it's quotation marks around it. It really is like a farmer's field that's been rollered. It's terrible. But there you go. Rotherham, the Millers, the Merry Millers, who used to be from Millmore, no more, of course, at New York Stadium, and they are being very, very persistent at winning games, at getting results, unbeaten in 5 in the league. Those 2 back-to-back defeats they had to Portsmouth and Rochdale seem a distant memory now. 2-2 draw against Southend. How on earth they drew with Southend? Unbelievable. But 2-2 draw against Fleetwood, that's fine. Then beating Shrewsbury away, excellent result that. 4-0 win against Peterborough is superb. And then beating Blackpool. I mean, Peterborough and Blackpool, who were right up there, getting those results at home. Unfortunately, they come to Oxford next, which I'm less confident about now after this run if they're on. But you never know. It's going to be a good game. They've got Bristol Rovers, Peterborough coming up, then Ipswich and Burton. So some big fixtures for Rotherham. And I'd say they may... I don't see them losing any key players over this next month. In fact, they might just add a little bit to that squad. So, yeah, really impressive form. And Ian Bradley will be our Rotherham correspondent, our roving reporter. He'll be enjoying it immensely. At the top,
second.
Yeah, wonderful. Second in the table, and
he wants mid-table.
Yeah, miserable sod, eh? Who wants Champions? I don't actually. To be fair, I was thinking about, do I want Oxford to go up? It's a difficult situation to to think about, because if you go into the Championship, you look at the financial situation of every club in the Championship, none of them are in any good, none of them make profit. Oxford don't even own our ground. Not looking good at all. It's a division that is pretty unforgiving. So, and if you look at like Luton, Barnsley, both bossed this league last season, really struggling. So yeah, it's a difficult one, but of course it'll be great to see Oxford United go up. The team at the moment leading the way, despite a tricky period, Ed, is Wycombe.
Wycombe, yeah. I mean, you look at their results and they don't look too good for a team top of the league, do they? They take a 1 point from the last 4, but it is worth noting who they played. They've had to go to Oxford, obviously. They've had to go to Portsmouth. They've had a home game against Coventry and a home game against Ipswich. That's 4 really tough teams. And then you look at the next 4 as well. They've got to go to Sunderland. They've got a home game against Rochdale. They've got to go away to Coventry, home game against Blackpool. And yet they're still top.
Yeah,
despite these results so far. So, I think we can say none of us expected them to be up here at the start of the season, but they're still hanging in there. And if they can turn the form around and get a couple of wins over these, considering how tight this league at the minute, they're still going to be right up there.
Yeah, not a great festive period for them, but, strategically winning all your games early on so that you can get through a sticky patch and still be top of the table, which of course is Gareth Ainsworth's masterful tactical plan.
It's that Liverpool education.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. There you go. But done a brilliant job, and Wycombe sit top as we go into 2020, as we hit into the next period of fixtures, and they'll be delighted with that. Right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll jump into League Two.
What does Man v Fat mean to you?
Lose weight and enjoy a game of football.
Mental health, camaraderie.
Friends, football, fat loss.
Reverse my diabetes.
Big, sweaty, fun.
Life-changing football.
Better and healthy lifestyle.
Good competitive sport.
Teamwork, banter and weight loss. Create a winning mentality to lose fat.
Hard work regime and football.
It means sustainable weight loss.
Don't let the boys down and don't let yourself down.
Man v Fat. Weigh, play, lose, win.
League Two.
Right, League Two. This has been quite interesting because obviously less of the sides were involved in the FA Cup. But guys, we start at the bottom. We've got Morecambe. Derek Adams has signed 4 players already, and with good reason, because it's been a torrid time over the festive period. 3 straight defeats, losing to Oldham, Cambridge and Bradford.
If you lose to Oldham, you deserve automatic relegation.
Oh, come off it.
It's been a tricky period, but they have signed Jordan Slew, who, if you remember, played for Sheffield United. I think the last team he played for there was Ashton United, so he's had a fair drop-off, I think, in his Football League career, it's fair to say. A couple of guys coming on loan from Burnley, and then Diago Raga joining from Plymouth. And he played really well under Derek Adams down in Plymouth, so that's an important pickup. But yeah, it's not been a particularly good period. They've only won 1 game, I think, is it 9 now? So a big second half of the season needed for Morecambe if they had to avoid the drop. Then we come to Stevenage, and Chris, the lowest scorers in the division, really struggling. But they have kept a surprising number of clean sheets if you look at their run. But they need to pick up points and fairly quickly.
Yeah, I was chatting to a Stevenage fan about this the other day, and apparently their defence is pretty impressive, but it's the lack of goals that's really costing them. And I mean, this is the problem for every team in League Two at the moment. Everyone wants that striker, and not everyone's going to get it. But at 0.6 goal a game for Stevenage, they desperately need it.
Yeah, Graham Wesley back. A lot of fans putting faith that he'll be the man to get them out of it. And next round of fixtures, 2 home games. You've got to look at targeting those. They've got Port Vale and Oldham at home. Really important for them to try and target minimum of 4 points, but you'd argue 6 points in those games. Chris Beach, Ed, at Carlisle. It's been a bit of an up and down spell since he's joined.
Yeah, a bit mixed. It started off looking relatively alright. They got obviously that really good win at Walsall, but that heavy defeat to Crewe on New Year's Day has really kind of put a dent in the hopes they had of really progressing forwards. They obviously got that great draw at Cardiff yesterday, even if they did let a 2-goal lead slip. And I don't know if you guys have seen it, but do you think that ball went out in the build-up to Cardiff's equaliser? I don't know if you guys have seen it or not.
I haven't seen
it. Yes, it had. It had gone out by a mile.
Yeah, it's not the best angle of it, but it certainly does seem to be a case that, they should have had VAR in that one, shouldn't they? But
yeah, I think the FA Cup should be either every game has VAR.
Yeah, definitely.
From a certain round
It should be
onwards.
like they did with the European Championships, where they said not every ground's got the technology for it. We won't have it.
Yeah,
Exactly.
That simple. Otherwise, you're playing
Exactly.
games with different rules.
Yeah, outrageous that as well, isn't it? I mean, it just damages the integrity of the competition. But yeah, so Carlisle, they have signed Elliot Watt, a youngster who with a fairly decent reputation on loan. So we'll see how he does coming in from Wolves. But they do need, they do. I mean, their defence has been getting better, but those two games in particular that you highlight against Colchester and Crewe, where they just collapsed, it's not good enough, and they won't be happy.
I think we need to understand the transfer saga around Jared Brentwaite as well, because I've seen relatively high bids obviously coming in. He's attracting a lot of interest, but if they can keep hold of him, that's going to be a massive boost for them heading into the back end of this season for sure.
Yeah, he's a very good young player. Oldham, Chris, not a very happy Christmas period. 1 win out of the 4, 3 others were all defeats.
Yeah, it's not been the best. We'd obviously had a reasonable run of form, but no one was getting too excited with it. And then got that win against Morecambe on Boxing Day, which was really pleasing to see. Then up come Salford, and it sort of fell apart against them. Lost 4-1. We were showing a little bit creatively, but the defence fell apart, and as has been our problem all season, there's no one to put the ball in the net. That game against Scunthorpe is probably the worst game I've seen this season. Again,
that even worse than Cheltenham yesterday.
Oh, it's close. I'd say it's close. Defensively, we've gone so poor. David Wheater, who we thought would be a saviour to our defence, has become a liability over the last few games.
Yeah, I mean, against Salford, one of the goals was definitely his fault. Your goalkeeper's dropping clangers and got away with one big time yesterday at Cheltenham.
He shouldn't have got away with it. He should never have got away with that. It's hard to see where the upturn comes from. We've got a new midfielder in from Burnley, who I won't try to pronounce his name.
Christian Ngessian, I think is how you pronounce it. And
I think it's Ngessian, yeah.
He's got some promise, but again, you're going to need, I think, improvements in other areas if you're seriously going to pull away from the trouble that you're in at the minute.
We're rumoured to be getting a defender in from Salford. I can't remember his name now, and I think that'll be big. David Wheater's, there's been some bids in from Bolton. I'm happy to drive him there.
Yeah, well, I mean, if he doesn't want to be there and he's on a good wage, that could be a very good move for Oldham in some respects.
I think it works both ways. We need an organiser, and he's not that. But I don't know. People have started to call for Dino's head, and I don't think that's the right move. Especially
I would say that's ridiculous. He's not. He's basically not had any of his own players apart from Chris McCann, who's probably been one of your best players since he arrived. So a bit hard to criticise Dino Marmia too much for the results that he's picked up since taking over. A big month though for Oldham. Leyton Orient still yet to appoint a permanent manager. They have had again, a pretty disappointing festive period with 2 defeats and a draw, losing to Colchester at home. Colchester in good form, so not too bad. Going to Newport and getting a point, letting it slip late though, and losing to Walsall. They'll be disappointed. They've had a lot of injuries. Obviously, their goalkeeper Dean Brill out for the entire season. So Sargent is going to have to take over, and he's looked pretty capable as a replacement. But they have had a number of niggling injuries since the beginning of the campaign, which was obviously marred by tragedy. So it's not been a great campaign for them. The next team, Mansfield. How on earth is this team doing so badly? I mean, I thought they'd win the league at a canter this season. They've been absolutely dreadful, and they haven't. I mean, they're playing a 4-4-2 since Graham Coughlin came in, and he definitely doesn't particularly favour the creative players. Although Jacob Mellis came in, did really well in the Cambridge win, but they don't look like they're going to create enough chances to win. And when you've got a strike force, a hat trick for Nicky Maynard against Cambridge, but if you've got Cook, Rose, and Maynard in a team, no way you should be down the bottom. But let's see, because there's lots of talk about players being brought in. They've got money to spend. But Ed, I'll let you take the next team, Grimsby, because probably one of the most surprising managerial appointments at this level for some time.
Yeah, I think Ian Holloway is a top class appointment, really. I'd say for any team in this division, really. So to be at Grimsby, and he's already reaping the rewards of it. He's had 2 1-0 wins, one against Salton, and then that win against Mansfield with 10 men on Saturday, which
Great
is just
finish.
super. Oh, great finish from Benning. Yeah, into his own net. Fantastic, that, isn't it? But yeah, if he can turn this around, you look at what's coming up next. They've got to go to Leyton Orient. That's one they should be looking to get points. Home game against Exeter, quite tough. Away to Croydon and home to Stevenage. It's not too bad of a run of form, I don't think, coming up. So if they can keep getting the points off that, who knows what they could do, really.
Yeah, they'll be wanting to consolidate, get Ian in there to really give them some boost, a bit of enthusiasm. I mean, he's a good coach. He'll have contacts you'd expect as well. And the team above them, though, Chris, Macclesfield, real poor. Every aspect of this team is poor. I mean, they've lost players. They've lost their manager. Form-wise, well, you can't argue too much. They've only lost 1 of their 4 games over the Christmas period, picking up points against Grimsby at home, away to Port Vale. I mean, that was Darren McMahon's last game in charge, and that's a fantastic result there. And then beating Cambridge yesterday by a goal to nil, an early goal in that game from Arthur Ganoa, getting them the win. Only defeat at Forest Green. I mean, but this is a club that's future is in doubt. Very, very worrying.
Well, quite, and this is the concerning thing we have in football at the moment, is there are so many clubs in trouble, and Macclesfield looks to be the worst of the lot at the moment. There's been more talk of wages going unpaid. Run of form, as you say, has been okay, and they host Oldham next week, which will be an interesting test considering where they are in the league. But the big talk of the season for them now is, will they survive?
Massive question marks.
Will they have a point deduction for that game that was called off? A further point deduction for the game that was called off?
I think they're getting away with that because it's been rearranged. The other one, I think, hasn't been the original one that got postponed hasn't been rearranged, but that other one has. So
Right.
I think they're going to be all right with that. But
I'm
even
sure
still,
they'll have to play all the fixtures though. Like they'll have to rearrange the other
I'm
one.
sure of that. But I think they're going to get away without the points deduction for this one.
No, I'm not so confident. We'll see. I'm not so confident because they had in their original points deduction suspended.
That's true. Yeah, that is true.
4 points were suspended, weren't they? So those could be dropped on them like a bombshell. So we'll see. The next team, Crawley, obviously slight upturn in form. Great result against Northampton on Boxing Day, 4-0 home win, then 3 consecutive 1-1 draws, and that's actually, you've got to say, pretty good because they've played Forest Green at home, Colchester away, and Grimsby away in that time. So John Yem's making them tougher to beat, and they'll take that. I think they've got a good squad of players. Just see whether they can find any consistency, because that has been their real bugbear of late. But they have, gone on a mini revival, you could say, and moved up the table. One team not on a mini revival and had a pretty miserable time of it is Newport County. Last win came back in October over Scunthorpe. That was the 19th of October. Since then, they have not won a single game. Back-to-back 1-1 draws at home, doing little, I think, to lift the mood. Struggling to see where they turn this around. There are going to be changes in January for Mike Flynn's side, but this is his worst run as a manager since taking over. Again, though, I don't think anyone's going to be getting too carried away with this poor form, because he's a good coach and they've got a decent squad there, and I expect them to pick up sooner rather than later. Ed, Scunthorpe, Paul Hurst certainly getting a tune out of them, but a bit of a mixed bag over Christmas.
Yeah, they were in pretty good form heading into the festive period, weren't they? But it's been 3 defeats in the last 4. Obviously, they've had that win at Oldham, which has been good, but they got the defeats to Crewe and Plymouth, which have not kind of really affected their momentum, and it kind of shows that there's another level that they've got to step up to, really, to get to that next point, I'd say.
I think about all the teams that I look at, I think this is the side that have had the worst consistent and persistent injury crisis since the start of the season. I mean, they've always got at least 3 or 4 players out. Yeah, at one point they had their entire midfield out injured. I know Van Veen came off with the flu as well in one of those games. I think it was against Crewe, so he actually missed the Oldham victory. But they really have struggled this season to keep all their charges fit, and that has been a problem. So you can say that they've done quite well considering everything, and I wonder how much improvements there will be to make in January. I don't think any team should rely on a January window to change the course of their season. I think it's a very sticky thing to try and do, and it's very difficult to do good business. But Scunthorpe won't be particularly happy with the festive period, but overall I think they are looking a lot better than they were a few months ago. Cambridge, they've had a pretty god-awful time of it. 4 defeats in the last 5. That 1-0 win over Morecambe at home again will do pretty much nothing to cheer the fan base. They've been awful. They've had to release Elliot Ward and Mark Richards because they've got no finances available to improve the squad. I think that's a sign of how difficult they are, difficult financial position that they are in. The fact that they're having to release veteran players and they can't replace them. So it's going to be a tough ask for Cambridge to do anything much this season. I mean, again, the gap between them, I think, and the top 7 is far too big, 10 points for them to charge up. But they're definitely not in danger of relegation. Chris Salford, this is a side with bags of money, as we know. But again, they've won 2, lost 2 over the festive period, and not been. I mean, the win against Crewe was excellent, but again, we'll expect some movement from them because they've already gone and signed Ash Hunter, which I think is a great pickup.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's been what we've said about Salford all season. They're inconsistent. I saw them play on the 29th. They didn't blow me away, but they were potent. They took their chances. Their left winger, whose name escapes me right now,
Jake Jervis.
Jervis, he was really good. They had some very tidy players. I think they can do a bit more creatively. But otherwise, I think they've got a reasonable squad. I think they'll be content with seeing the season out as a sort of upper mid-table side, and they can push on next season, I think.
I think they will do. I think they certainly will do. They've got some good players in that squad. They've got Richie Towell in midfield, who is probably on his day one of the best midfielders in the division. So Ed, Walsall, they are really rocketing up that table.
I've been getting really impressed with them. They obviously had that run of 6 consecutive defeats back in October, which was abysmal. But since then, they've only lost 1, and it was that quite frustrating defeat to Carlisle. But what I'm really impressed with is, I think there's always been a bit of a problem with working out who exactly their main strike force is going to be. They've had a lot of rotation in the early months, but it looks now like it is going to be Josh Gordon and Keenan Lavery going forwards. And you've got a pretty solid midfield alongside a defensive behind that, and we're slowly starting to see a team that can start to climb up that table, certainly.
Yeah, I'd like to see them get a bit more creative, and they've got to keep hold of Wes McDonald.
Yes,
his contract
definitely.
is up. But yeah, this has been a very impressive festive form period for them. 3 wins and 1 defeat, so 9 points from 12. You take that all day long. I think the only surprise, like you say, was that with this frustration with that defeat against Carlisle, the red card, and then conceding a goal late. Darryl Clark, though, must take a lot of credit for the way he's sort of pulled this team up, because he hasn't had much time, really to work with this lot. He only came in the summer, and just come down, big transition. So Port Vale, Chris, Tom Pope scoring against John Stones yesterday. That was a lovely story.
I love that.
Absolutely.
It's as well.
Quality header.
Wonderful header. Great movement. Got in front of his man, bulleted it into the corner, and they've only lost. Well, they haven't lost at all over Christmas, and 3 draws and a win. It's pretty solid stuff.
Yeah, and they're scoring pretty freely. They've scored 2 goals in each of their last 3 league games. 1 goal prior to that against Port Vale. So there's certainly something to build from there. Only 1 win, but it was a very good win against Swindon, and there's not too much disgrace in drawing with Mansfield or Macclesfield, though they probably will have hoped to have done a bit better than them. But I think they can be pretty content, and I think they can be very happy with how they played yesterday against Man City.
Yeah. I hope Jake Taylor stays. On loan from Notts Forest, there was talk when I was speaking to Tom Pope about it that he might be moved on, but he's an important player for them, so I hope they can persuade Forest that the best thing for both player and club alike is for him to stay playing where he's playing regularly and is relatively happy. Northampton, they've had a bit of a mixed time over the festive period. Obviously, a 1-1 draw at Mansfield was followed by a horrendous performance and a costly one for injuries as well against Crawley, where they lost Harry Smith, Sean McWilliams and I think even Alan McCormick as well, all to injuries against in that 4-0 defeat at Crawley. A 1-1 draw with Cheltenham was then followed up by a 1-0 win over Stevenage very late in the day. So, yes, indeed, it's going to be interesting to see how Keith Curle improves this squad in this month. I think they're not needing a lot. They've got quite a good, solid group of players, and the form overall has been very impressive. Only 2 defeats, and I think something like the last 11 games. So very, very good for them, and they sit, just outside the playoffs places as it stands. Ed, Colchester, John McGreal, the McGreal deal as I call him, he's done a pretty good job. And yeah, sorry, terrible.
I didn't know you used that. Oh dear.
I'll edit that out. That's fine. No, they've done really well. The form has been superb. 3 straight draws, slightly frustrating, but let's not forget, it's not always easy, this division, to pick up the victories, and it's kept them right close, to even the automatic positions.
They've been affected by injuries as well, it's worth remembering. They've had Luke Prosser out for a little while, Bramall's been out, still got Paris Cohen Hall out, he's going to come back after a while. Courtney Senior's been missing as well, so they've had to, I can't remember exactly, but they had to put pretty much a makeshift defence together. They've had Lapsey out suspended as well, so it's not too bad results. I think that Stevenage one, particularly when you're playing against a team that has 10 men, so I think well over 60, 70 minutes, and to come away with just a draw is probably not the result that most of those fans would be happy about, but it's certainly still been a decent Christmas period, I'd say.
Yeah, and no defeats in 11 in the league, so certainly moving up. Forest Green, not so much festive fun, but they did just sign Giovanni Brown on loan from Colchester, who's not been playing much for the youth, so that's a very big pickup. You look at they've only lost 1 of the last 5, but they've only won 1, I suppose, in the last sort of 7 or 8. So it's not been a very good run. Some fans, Ed, you were saying, were a bit frustrated with Mark Cooper.
Yeah, I think it's just because of how well they started the season. They were right up there. I think they were top in September time, and it's kind of like you say, it's been dropping down recently. And they've only had that 1 win in their last 7, I believe. And I think after what happened last year with the playoffs, the ambitions of Forest Green is to go one step further now and get that promotion. And they're starting to be a bit worried that they're going to slip out of the top 7 altogether if they keep going the way they are.
I reckon they'll sign a striker, though. I do reckon
they do need a striker. Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon they'll go out for it. Plymouth, no hiding the fact they are looking for a striker, but they got his name escapes me as we come to the most important.
Luke Jeffcott.
That's the chap. He was on loan at Truro, was recalled due to the emergency situation with their injuries, and he scores a brace and could have had a hat trick in a 3-1 win at Scunthorpe. Fantastic stuff.
Superb.
Indeed, yeah. Excellent. I agree with you that they need the firepower. And the part of the problem is that all of their strikers have picked up an injury at some form in the season. But if you can bring in that guy who can get you maybe 10, 15 in the back end of the season, with the service you've got from the likes of George Cooper, Sarcevic, Byron Moore has been playing wing back as well, that midfield's fantastic. So if you can get someone at the end of those chances, we're looking at a team that could get right up there. Certainly.
And you can't criticise 3 wins out of 4 in the festive period.
No, you can't.
A frustrating defeat in which Dom Telford got another injury against Swindon on the 1st of January. But yeah, I'm very positive about Plymouth, and we said they'd be up there. We said they'd be the team we think were in a false position when they were mid-table. It's proving to be the case, and they do have that flexibility. I think Ryan Lowe wants to move some of the fringe players on and bring in a couple more quality players that he can find some goals from, but doing very well. Cheltenham, they've been fine. They lost to Plymouth on Boxing Day, but they've then got a draw at Northampton and at Newport, and then beat Oldham 3-0 yesterday. So they're doing fine. They've got Alfie May signed to add to the attack, with Gavin Riley going back to Bristol Rovers. How did he look?
Yeah, I was well impressed with him, and Broom. They both really impressed me.
Yeah, well, Alfie May always gives 100%. Doncaster fans' general reaction on Twitter, and I know that's not the total reaction of fans everywhere, but it was disappointment that he'd left. So a big signing for Cheltenham. And again, they don't lose games. They've lost, 1 in 8 or 9? I mean, they're doing a fantastic job of making sure they're hard to beat. Yes, they've drawn too many, you could argue, but they'd snap like Luke said, they'd snap your hand off where they are at this stage of the season, and they're doing really, really well. Ed, Bradford, their festive period was pretty solid.
Solid, yeah. That draw with Swindon, obviously, that Shea McCartan free kick right at the end, fantastic to take a point from that, obviously. The whole debate with Bradford obviously revolves around Johan Doyle at the moment. I think there's a recall option that's active in the next couple of days, which Gary Bow has the option to use. And that could not only swing Bradford's season, but it could swing Swindon's as well, depending on whether or not they choose to bring him back.
I mean, if you're Bradford, it's all about the finances. That's the truth. Everyone says, you've got to bring him back to damage Swindon and to give yourself the best chance. But it's all about money. And that'll be whether or not they've got the budget to absorb the wages that he's on.
The problem is, I think they're really attack heavy. You've still got Jamie Devitt's on his way back, Clayton Donaldson's on his way back. You've already got James Vaughan in there. There's Harry Pritchard, Zelly Ishmael, Dylan Connolly, Aramide Ote. Where do you fit Johan Doyle into that? You don't.
Do you take him back just to stop your rivals?
That's all it would be for. But for the sake of Doyle, I'd want, for the sake of his career, just let him go. I think
sell him. I'd say to Swindon, come on, what's the best offer you can give us, and what can you give us if you get promoted? There's got to be some. I'm sure these conversations are happening behind the scenes.
But why would? I mean, at the end of the day, if Bradford recall him, I presume Swindon are paying his wages.
At least a chunk of them, you'd imagine.
It'll be on big money with Bradford. To recall them, they're adding on to their wage bill. Why would Swindon buy him? They've got him for no transfer fee for the rest of the season, and then they can have that conversation at the end of the season.
We'll see. It could be. Well, otherwise we'll take him back. But I don't know. Crewe, they've had. Well, I mean, I think they've been very impressive. I mean, 3 wins, all of which they've scored multiple goals in. The only blip was that Boxing Day defeat at Salford, and Salford are a solid side, so that's been a tremendous pickup. And they had their mini blip, but they've done well since the end of November. They've done really, really well. They've picked up results: a 5-1 thrashing of Stevenage, a 4-1 thrashing of Carlisle, a 3-1 beating of Scunthorpe. And Paul Hurst said that's the best team he's seen at this level, and I think that's a big compliment because Crewe, we know how well they can play. They can be bullied. They have been in a couple of games this season, most notably against Port Vale and Northampton, 2 very physical sides. But no, they're right back in amongst the form. And their next game is Swindon away, which will be one of the best, you'd think, footballing matchups of the season at this level. So a fantastic period of form for them. I don't see them adding anything in January. Maybe defensively. Obviously, Eddie Nolan's had an injury, and he's a huge player for them. They do have the option, I think, to maybe bring in one player, but we'll see how that transpires because they're notoriously tight on their budgets there. Chris, Exeter?
What a bit of form.
Wonderful.
Yeah, they got. That was in the JP. What was that? The win yesterday against Ipswich. That was in the EFL Trophy, wasn't it?
More money for them.
So a bit more money. Yeah, is it 10 grand a win or is it 20 grand a win at this point now?
I think it's 20 now. Yeah.
Yeah. So that'll do them a lot of good, especially at this time of year. Good win against Forest Green, especially when they were down to 10 men. They can't be disheartened really with a 2-2 draw against Colchester.
No way at all. And obviously beating Newport, 3-3 draw from being 3-0 down against Walsall. I mean, there's hardly any negatives to take at all. And then 3 straight wins prior to that. The last defeat came on the 2nd of November in the league against Bradford away. So wonderful job Matt Taylor's doing. He's also had a horrendous injury crisis to deal with, and you look at that. Fantastic.
Game in hand on Swindon.
Yeah, game in hand on them. They play them on the 1st of February at Swindon at the county ground. Obviously, Jack Sparks is out for the entire campaign, and Craig Woodman as well has had an injury, which is going to keep him out for at least a couple more weeks. So that left wing back position, I suppose Jaden Richardson will have to deputise and carry on doing a good job there. But they are a bit light, so you might see, maybe a loan come in, maybe a couple of players join. But I think they have one of the better squads in this division, and they've certainly utilised it well. And then we come finally to Swindon, who over the festive period only lost once. That was away at Port Vale, which is a difficult place to go, and they have had some pretty serious injuries to their entire defence during this period. So no shame in that. A 4-0 win at home against Cambridge, 2-1. This is a massive result. A 2-1 win at Plymouth, who are one of the best sides in the division, and then disappointing they didn't hold on for the win against Bradford, who are another big side. But overall, you can't complain, Ed. That is a fantastic place to be heading into 2020.
Well, the top of the league, aren't they? Like, how can you complain about being top of the league?
You can try.
How do you complain? Exactly. You can't. Like, obviously, we all know who the star of the team is, but I want to bring up Jerry Yates as well, who is, second in that goal scoring charts at the minute with 11. And you kind of think of Swindon as being that team that has that class striker in Aaron Doyle, and they do. But there's so much more to them as well, that they do have the likes of Keshi Anderson, is it Jayasimi? I think is the name, the Norwich Lone.
Jayasimi, I'm known
yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and Jerry Yates as well. There is a quality team alongside him as well. So
you look at their midfield as well. You've got is it Jordan Lydon?
Yeah, Anthony Grant. Yeah,
Danny Rose when he gets a game. I mean, he's a decent professional as well. And obviously Michael Doughty. This is a great team.
Lydon's suspended now though.
He is suspended. Yeah.
How long's he out for?
It was a straight red, wasn't it? So was that 2 games?
Yeah, and Anthony Grant's been dropping back in defence, so they'll have to. I think they risked Zeki Friars yesterday, did they, playing in that position? Who's, I think, more akin to being a fullback. But this is just this is where they have to bring in a defender pretty quickly, I think.
Yeah,
definitely. But like you say, top of the league, you can't really complain too much, can you?
50 points from their 26 games, sitting pretty. And concluding our festive form roundup, and it's been an interesting look actually when you go through each team and see how they've done. No surprises that those teams at the top are doing really well. A few to keep an eye on whether they can cling on to where they are. Look at Cheltenham, if they can turn those draws into wins, they'll shoot straight back up. Colchester, if they can, they're the team to watch out for. Great form that they're on. A few players coming back from injury, bound to be doing a little bit of business this window, and they've got very good recruitment record, so they'll be one to keep an eye on in League Two. So but Ed, great for you to join us again. I hope you're enjoying the podcast experience.
Oh yeah, brilliant! Thank you so much for having me, guys.
Chris, thank you for joining despite your side's rather poor form over Christmas.
Yeah, absolute pleasure.
Yeah, and guys, thank you very much for listening to this. Go check out Man v Fat. If you can be a patron to us, it would be massive, as we look to always improve our content and to keep this going week in, week out. But until next week, from us, it's goodbye.